What's up, everybody? Derek Johnson here, going live. Little delay. Had some power issues this past weekend, so decided to go live midweek. I will continue also doing another one this Sunday, depending on what the next few days brings us, via President Donald John Trump, wartime president and supreme commander. All right, so did you see his post yesterday? He's not been posting a whole lot, first and foremost, but yesterday was complete validation. And I am the only person, with the books, first and foremost, that just so happen to be #1 bestsellers. This month, the first one will be 2 years in a row of that difficult feat, which I've learned is very difficult to have a #1 bestseller. So, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part 1 and 2. Part 1 will be in production now 2 years. 2 years, this, just in about a week. Right here. Alright. This stemmed from what the OGs who have been following me for over 3 years know as the documents.info, which are still available, but they're just dated because they were published in January 2021. The world and you did not know me until August 2022. So how did I already know to already have been typing up the documents to publish in January 2021? How did I already know we were in a military government, military occupation, going to be continuity government? How did I know that? I mean, in reality, I wouldn't have to say any more. But I do care about people. I'm doing this for the right reasons. And it's so much fun coming on here week in and week out, month in, month out at this point, and really year in and year out at this point. Just being able to just absolutely just smile and grin and know there's not a thing in the world that the morons, the idiots, and the evil can do to stop it. Not a thing in the world. You're truly witnessing the reset of our nation back to the Declaration of Independence. That's what you've been witnessing. Whether you realize it or not, that's what you've been witnessing. 45-47. The dash matters. And guess who started that hashtag? The dash matters. Alright. So, but see, it wasn't just a cool hashtag. It is an actual blueprint, strategy, strategic plan, pre-planned strategic plan that outlined this whole operation. That's why I always say put brackets around it as if you could see the end already. It's not going to end after that in the sense of the golden age, but this is a strategic plan and operation. The laws and orders outline it. So if you oblige me just a little bit, I love being able to take a collection of all the negative comments over the past 3 years and just read a few of them to show you the disarray out there and why you don't need disarray, why you don't need confusion, why you don't need fear. So let's just read a few of them. But first and foremost, kudos to all you OGs, to all you real patriots. You know who you are, right? And we're never going to be able to show, I will be able to. I always say we because it's cohesive and, I'm part of you, you part of me, this whole network, if you will, that we've built. But we, on the other hand, you won't be able to prove, unless you have screenshots like I do, of all the negative category, morons category, thieves category, evil category that I've dealt with the last 3.5 years, just on my level. Outside of what I'm doing for God and country, the ankle biters, if you will, that I've had to deal with on top of what I've been tasked to do, those people, I will be able to prove them because I have it all screenshot. I have everything. And you can screenshot all those. So, but there's going to be a lot of people in this nation you're never going to know if they truly were or were not a patriot because they're going to benefit from it. It's like all those who hid in their homes during the Revolutionary War, those who didn't fight, those who didn't say, I mean, we won't ever know how many were actually whining, complaining, griping, fussing, but we can assume because you're seeing it right now. The same numbers are there. It's only a few of us that knows what's going on. The rest are whining, complaining, griping, fussing, cussing, arguing, mad, you name it. And they have zero foundation to stand on. Zero. So there's no way we're never going to be able to prove unless you have the screenshots in today's technology to say, yeah, well, here's what you said back here in 2020. 2021, 2022. I can do that because I have a lot of people that I've screenshot and time-stamped and emailed to myself. But most people, you're not going to be able to prove that. So kudos to you real patriots because you know who you are. A lot of them are going to blend in the future. And in reality, with a good heart and what this whole operation is supposed to be about, then, okay, we won't ever know, but you know if you really are or not. You know what's going on. Well, let's just read some things, just a few things where I can set this up in a fun way. Nothing's happening. You're so full of, why would it look like this if President Trump was still in charge? Why would Trump do this if he was still in charge? F you, Derek Johnson. Someone lost their child. This is Trump's fault. Trump is all about himself. Dictator, king, Nazi. And then you got all those who try to make things up. And you got those who try to steal things. Now that's more personal of what was done to me. Do you see how much disarray just those few comments are, just alone? And that's just a few. That's not all of them. That's just a few in each category. Do you see the disarray there? None of those are in one category, and they're negative, yes. But they're not in the same category because some of those were Republicans. Some of those are libtards. So do you see how those two, why do they reflect each other? Why do they look like each other? So my question is always like, well, do you believe in the Revolutionary War? Because liberals use the words, they use the term Constitution. They don't know anything about it. They use that term. Republicans use the same term. But majority of Republicans don't know anything about the Constitution either. But that's the whole reason why we're here. We're all here right now because of the Revolutionary War, the foundation, the ideologies of that foundation. So you have to have a basis and a formula that you stand on, a foundation, an origin, and a formula, a blueprint, a strategy, always. A broad strategy that fits the United States of America. Because we have different cultures in America. And that's cool. We're supposed to. I'm a Southerner, if you can't tell, you know. So we have our own culture in the South. It's a whole lot different. And if you're well-traveled in the U.S., you can tell where it changes. Every time you go somewhere, you can see that divider line. So we have a broad picture here. But Republicans and liberals looking alike shows you that these people, that massive category, do not have a foundation, an origin, and principles of the ideologies. Because there's only one truth. And the way the law is written, the law is supposed to be neutral on paper. it's like a horse trough, all right, or a cattle trough, right, where the horses come feed. Well, a horse comes from this side, a horse comes from this side. Now, those two horses may not like each other, but if it's the only water trough there, they got to find a way and or not come to the trough at the same time. But the law is written as neutral as possible. So when you have one on this side saying, oh, the Constitution says this, and one on this side, well, it says that, and they never quote from it, you have to learn that. You have to be able to, that's a simple skill set. That's not even difficult. So majority of the people right now barking and yelling and whining and complaining and griping and fussing and moaning and kicking and cussing and arguing and all this other stuff, they don't even have a foundation. They can't even quote one single word from one single line, from one single paragraph, from one single law. That's why 68% of Americans, on average, cannot simply name the three branches of government. But oh boy, do they want an opinion. Oh, do they have their First Amendment. So it's a reminder. There's a lot of new people on my pages. I think we're right around 1 million on all of my accounts. I don't really know the number, but it's somewhere up there. But doesn't really matter. It's not about the numbers. But just making a point here, there's a lot of new people. All right. So first things first. Friendly reminder about me and what I do and who I am. And it's not about who I am from that angle, because I'm not really anybody. But, reminder, I provide the 40,000-foot view of all the intricate layers of laws and orders from the military sector and the federal government sector. That's all I talk about. I don't talk about anything else but the laws and the orders that make up the 45-47, because this is most certainly by laws and orders currently invoked right now that stem from 2017, as far as the invocation of them, which I outline and show you depending on the topic that we're talking about. But the whole operation is a strategic pre-plan, meaning strategic. It was pre-planned. The whole thing. Everything you see now in 2022, this is why I tell veterans, if you will remember your oath, all right, you can be involuntarily called back at an external capacity, not internal. You could be internal as well, depending on your rank and depending on what your skill sets are, etc. But there's all kind of layers of voluntary and involuntary, internal and external. And as of late 2022, I received a phone call, and I went through the process of the Department of then Defense, now War, and I received a specific badge. All right. We have talked about when the time will be right to display who that is and when. All right. But again, even without any of that, these are straight up current invoked, like an invocation, invoked laws and orders. If you didn't have them, you want to talk about fear and chaos and pandemonium, you want to talk about that? Oh, you'd have that for sure if you didn't have what you are seeing and witnessing right now. So it's not about me. It's not about me being right or correct. And I'm not right because I'm right. I'm correct. We're going to use the correct terminology here. I'm correct because I'm following a blueprint and a formula. Laws and orders currently invoked in a chronological order. I'm correct because my foundation has an origin, a glossary, an index, definitions, terms, which make up a verbiage. If you don't know that verbiage, if you don't know those definitions, those terms, that glossary, that index, you're going to be lost. And you're going to sound like all those categories above. And you don't have to. You don't have to. And we're in the world of social media. And I tell people all the time, you know, these comment boxes have a short shelf life because you're in so many comment boxes daily. And you shouldn't be. You don't need to be. Mainstream media are all under wartime orders that are currently invoked when you know the bigger picture and work your way down. So they're saying certain things that either distract you, which are also, a distraction is also an engagement. They're two things. They're to distract you, but they're also engaging. If you consider yourself a patriot, a President Trump supporter, a Republican, then you're supposed to know the blueprint. If you're still falling for things that make you upset, mad, or frustrated, or agitated, and you just want to get in the comment and let them have it, as the saying is, you don't need to. You don't have to. These pieces that they're putting out there are for the people who don't know a single thing, haven't heard me yet, don't know the blueprint, don't know the formula. Because if you didn't have laws and orders, well, why do you even believe in the foundation? Why do you believe in the Revolutionary War? Why do you believe in the Revolutionary time period? Why do you believe in the Constitution? Why do you believe in the Declaration of Independence? Do you realize that those men back then had to get frustrated with something that had not been working? You got to remember, you got to go back to a time when we didn't have any of the Constitution, the Declaration, the Federalist Papers, the amendments. You got to put yourself in those shoes. Those men back then didn't have anything. So they were frustrated, and they ceased everything around them and went to war. You don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. We didn't have to do that. This war is not between you and people. This is a global alliance of the good guys and gals versus the swamp alliance. And it had to be cleaned out top down this time around because our origin's motto, the Revolutionary War's motto, was taxation without representation. Now we have representatives, but you, the people, most of you, cannot name a single word from a single line, from a single paragraph, from one single law. And then a portion of those people that can't do that are the same people who say only lawyers can know the law. Then you wonder why we are where we are. You can know just as much law as a lawyer. We have deemed in America to practice law that you have to do certain things. Not to study it. Not to know it. That's where you are your worst enemy. You weaken yourself by not knowing what you can know. So that's why you never see anybody out there, not one single person, and it's to be expected, the quote-unquote attacks from the ankle biters, because they have such low IQ that they have one brain cell fighting for 4 chambers in their brain and they don't know where to go. So what do? Oh, Derek Johnson's a liar. He's a liar. You can be 100% wrong and not be a liar. Liar means you are taking something that most definitely says roses are red, and I'm telling you that roses are blue. And then you're sitting here arguing, well, I would be arguing what it says on paper. So see, these people out there, they're not looking at what the law reads right now, what it says. And it's really not that difficult, ironically. So not a single person out there, especially in that real super negative world, they haven't taken one single word from one single line, from one single paragraph, from one single law, out of all the laws and orders that I have outlined in these books that are currently in votes right now that outline the 45-47, they haven't taken one single word of one law and told you how it doesn't mean what it means. You know why? Because they can't. That's not how the law works. So therefore, guess what they do? They align themselves with whom? The enemy, because they're looking like it. And if they're not really the enemy, and they just are absolutely a confused, ridiculous Republican, then guess what they did? They're worse than a Democrat. They're worse than a liberal. When you claim that you're a Republican, conservative, and you're sitting here trying to say what I'm saying is not factual, it's not evidence, it's not real, it's a lie, and you claim that you're a President Trump supporter, but you don't even know the laws and the orders of which he's working with, you make yourself look 100 times worse than a libtard. Now, they still don't know the laws and orders either, but at least they're vocal about their hatred. They can't tell you why they hate President Trump, but at least they're saying something that's projectile that says they're in dissent. When you're a Republican, conservative, President Trump supporter, and you don't even know the laws and the orders of which your president is working with, you are more atrocious than they are. Which means you got to do what? Elevate yourself. The whole reason President Trump was brought here in the first place is that he's a face of this. And it's to be different. That's what the dash is for. This is an operation. We're leaving the past. Well, guess what the past brought you? Drama and propaganda. You have never seen in a 1-hour segment Fox News or any of them break down every single law and order. All they do is, they just ruffle your feathers and drama and, propaganda and just, yeah, this happened today and, they said this and they said, all the past. Now, there's still distraction pieces right now because the law shows we're in a military government, a military occupation, a continuity government, continuity of operations. The law shows this. And what's even more frustrating for a good guy and a good gal out there that's fighting for the right reasons, but also has a badge or is an operator, whoever everybody is out there that are official capacity, is the fact that the level of disrespect and disappreciation for the military is unprecedented. When you hear the term military, you just think of your cousin, your daddy, your uncle, or whoever. There are so many layers of strategies and tactics. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force now, Coast Guard. There's so many different units. There's so many different MOSs, specialties. There's so many things. And then your ranks, then your chain of command. There's so many intricate layers of the military. So when you're saying that unconventional warfare and irregular warfare are hogwash, you're only hurting yourself. You should thank God that there are tactics as such. Those are the very tactics that have made the U.S. sustain, even though it's been dragging broken legs and everything, the last 60 years, especially the last 60 years. It's been your special forces, your special operations, your Marine Corps. It's been all of the special operations that's helped fight these presidents along the way and actually just kind of like a tug of war, like, no, we're not doing this. So, no, it has not operated efficiently and effectively as it should and could, but thank God, you ought to be thanking God for these military tactics, military strategies, the generals and the admirals. They hadn't all been good, but it's been a very few less of them than it has been, obviously, the swamp. So when you don't seek to study what this dash means, you're not doing me an injustice. You're doing God an injustice. You're doing your nation an injustice. You're doing the military an injustice. And you're doing the man who's the face of it an injustice. Long before it ever would get to someone like me. But again, everybody's going to benefit from it. The worst hater, naysayer, troll out there is going to benefit from it. But God knows. God sees all. And they know. And people like me have the John Wayne attitude. You ever seen the movie The Cowboys? I've shared that clip before where the little boy stutters really bad. And the other little cowboy was drowning. And he couldn't get the words out to say he's drowning. He's in the water. Help, help. And the kid had been following along behind. And he saw what's going on. He knew this was his opportunity to save the kid. He did. Got hired on. Then John Wayne walks over to that little boy and said, "You damn near killed your friend." And I tried. And the hell you did. Remember that scene? And he can't. If that had been you in that water, we'd have heard you loud and clear. Then he kept agitating him. And he called him an SOB. He said, "What'd you call me? You mean SOB? Say it louder. UGDMSOB? Say it one more time." And he says, "UGD mean blah, 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 son." Didn't stutter a word. He said, "I wasn't making a habit of calling me that, son." See, so you can call me every name in the book. You can say everything you want to say. I've been through it all. I've had people try to frame me. I've had it everything. But guess what? I'm not here to preach, but guess who saw it? Up here. And sometimes you just got to let him fight your battles for you. All right, when it comes to this level. All right, because some of it's to be expected. Morons being morons. Low IQ being low IQ. But unfortunately, along the way, 20,000 people roughly have left the page over the last 3 years because they followed liars and thieves. True liars and thieves. Those who try to steal my federal trademark, try to register my federal trademark, try to prevent book sales. Did it stop them? Nope. So guess what, though? Those people who left, their blood is on their hands. And people have actually committed suicide over the disarray, over the confusion, over what they perceived as fear and what they perceived as no way forward in their lives, financially and all kinds of other things. So all you people out there that have tried to deceive people, especially blatantly, their blood's on your hands. And you know who you are. And I've got your screenshot too. President Trump literally just validated everything when he posted yesterday. It may be the day before now, I'm getting the days mixed up. But he posted that all executive orders, proclamations, any kind of legal quote-unquote document is hereby null and void by quote-unquote Joe. It has no legal effect, is what President Trump put in there. All of them. Now, they already didn't have any of that, and we're still in the operation. We're on the latter part of it. Not the portion that people think is a presidency, but we're on the latter portion of the operation because there's a partial revocation of continuity government. Which means we're on the latter part. And everything I talk about, the Reconstitution, which there are documents of that, documented, the reconstitution, the resetting of all the three branches. There's documentation of this. So all the current laws and orders outline irregular warfare, unconventional warfare tactics of a government in exile and a puppet government. President Trump validated that just about 2 months ago when he was sitting with the Turkish president. He said he remained my friend while in exile. He said the word exile 3 different times, and he said it with an emphasis on that word, where that word had a focal point, and your ears, if you were listening, not hearing, if your ears were listening, you'd hear a focal point being drawn to that word. While I was in exile, see, he paused. Boom. He said exile 3 times. That's not a federal government term. Again. See, everything that President Trump has said along the way, there's been two portions of the speech. The portion that the distractors have to hear, that all the people in the distraction section that just hear things and don't know what's going on lawfully, there's that portion. And then the little bitty percentile of me who hear it, but then go, here you go. Here's the military law that backs it. Here's the federal law that backs that, supports it, validates it, plus his proclamation. So at this point, if you're angry, bitter, upset, mad, frustrated, all the other terminology, it's because you choose to be. You don't have to be. There's nothing to fear. And what you think you're seeing, if you're still following anything mainstream, and if you're following any big blue check out there that have millions of followers on one blue check account, especially when they were here before 2017, they don't have a clue what's going on lawfully. And moving forward into the future, I don't know what they're going to do. I know Instagram's already changed, and also TikTok. You can only use 5 hashtags now. So they're slowly ripping the rug out. You can't rip the rug out because so many kids, especially, are addicted to the digital pacifier. So they have to slowly bring it back down. But there are too many moving mouths who think they're official just because they have a quote-unquote First Amendment. That is not how we maintain and sustain in the future. That's also why I've been talking about the sedition portion of the 1798 Aliens Act that has most definitely been invoked. Supreme Court interpreted it and validated that President Trump can most certainly use that and invoke it. Well, there was another portion to that act that they're not talking about on purpose. There has to be a resetting of all the moving lips and faces out there on these platforms who think just because you can go to Google and see something that fits your tiny little narrative, that don't mean a thing. The whole thing's an operation up here, and it has to be reset up here, and it is being reset. The bar exam next year, common law. There was an attorney not long ago talking about how they, there you go, libtards, there's one of your pronouns. See how you put emphasis on your little pronouns and now it's going to backfire on you? Who's they? Sir, can you tell me who they are? This was an attorney from a university. You should think of all your law schools out there. Universities, plural. Think of all that, sis. We've been teaching law this way all these years. Now they are telling us we have to change. He never told who they are. I know who they are. Do you know? Military and federal attorneys. Which means the top has been cleaned out. The law. And it's a straight up reflection of Marburg versus Madison, 1803. When James Madison, the founding father who solely wrote the Constitution and solely wrote the Bill of Rights, had to go into the Supreme Court of his creation, literature-wise. Now think about that. Here's the man who drafted the Constitution having to go into the Supreme Court of his creation, and all those other men who signed it and said, yes, we love this, we're signing it, had to go into the Supreme Court to clarify what a law looked like. 16 years after he wrote the Constitution. Those of you over 40, how quick did 16 years go by? Our founding father had to go into the Supreme Court to clarify what a law looked like 16 years after the creation of our system that we still are sitting here today conversing over. So keep in mind, again, they're number one for a reason. It's hard to have a number one bestseller. Trust me, it's difficult. But keep in mind where I signed the contract for this. So 2 days ago, I had my 3-year anniversary of my first time getting to be around President Donald John Trump, which was what an honor. Witty, humorous, very complimentive. I don't know, there's just so many words you can say about him. And at the private golf course. Well, then 2 months later, for my birthday, we were back there at Trump International. There wasn't hardly any people there that day. In December, there were a lot of people. But February the 18th, which is not my birthday, but we were celebrating it on that day, I signed my publicity contract with one of the biggest publicists in books, not publisher, publicist, who put me on radio and also TV, did a lot of Fox syndicates and things like that in radio, talk radio. I signed my publicity contract at President Trump's reserve table. No one has ever been allowed to sit in his chair before. That was confirmed. Sat in his chair, signed my publicity contract. There's photos, time-stamped, everything. With the man president. And a cool, happy birthday wish. This was 2 months before. Well, really, it was a month and a half. There I go again. There's that hillbilly math. So February the 18th to April the 2nd, 2023. Do your math. Well, I can't remember if that was a leap year or not, but let's just assume it wasn't. All right, so there was 10 more days left in February. March has 31 days in it, so there's 41 days. April the 2nd, 1, 2. 43 days later, President Trump puts the dash on this ball cap. I signed my contract 43 days before President Trump put that on here. And this outlines that dash. So when people say, well, how can you know so much stuff, Derek Johnson? I don't know. You want to thank my mama and my daddy? They'd be a good start. I wish you could thank my grandparents. They'd also be a great start. There's that. Let's thank them, all right, for, good genes, I guess. Also, while we're at it, while I'm thinking about it, 45 plus 46 plus 47 is 138. If you do my name in gematria, Derek Johnson, it equals 138. Guess what else equals 138? Donald Trump. So when you say, how can you know what you know? Well, it must be a God code. What are the odds in history that all these numbers add up? at this time period. Then also, while we're on it, before we get to the real fun stuff, 4 men. Sorry, ladies. 4 men. 4 men wrote every one of our founding documents. James Madison, who wrote the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and over half of the Federalist Papers, 85 of those. A portion of those he solo wrote, and the other portions he co-wrote with Alexander Hamilton and John Jay. And then you have Thomas Jefferson, the drafter of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. Every bit of what we stand on in the United States of America that liberals are butchering, have twisted, manipulated, gaslit you, all that, misconstrued, misused, overused. Republicans, rhinos, a strong, very close second. The very thing that we're sitting here talking about today, 4 men. Now watch this. All you real patriots out there, all you real patriots, you know who you are. Now watch this. At that time period, the population was 2,300,000 people. If you divide 2.3 million into 4, you know what number you get? It's 5 zeros in front of the number 17. Can't make this up. President Trump, wartime president, supreme commander Trump, says we are a nation of laws and orders. He's posted this over and over. He said it over and over. And guess what majority of people who support him did? Cheered, clapped, nod head in agreement, liked or loved the post. So what do you think laws and orders means if what I'm showing you is quote-unquote hogwash, quote-unquote nonsense, quote-unquote BS, quote-unquote not true? The other portion, nothing's happening. There's nothing happening. Nothing's going to happen till we see arrests and nothing. I mean, how do you think it was supposed to be? I mean, you really think that the swamp, the global swamp, do you really think people so evil and corrupt just say, all right, you got us, we give up? Why would you not believe that something so complex would not need a strategy, a game plan, a blueprint, a formula, a battle plan? Are you that naive out there, people? I mean, you got to be. I mean, I'm already answering my question. Derek Johnson, he's just dragging things out. Every week he finds something that can just... Laws and orders outline what's going on. Everything that comes out of my trap, my rattle trap, everything that comes right out of here has a law, an order, a proclamation, and a legal document to back it, support it, and validate it. And you know how you prove that? You have to go read, study, and comprehend it. That's why there are so many patriots out there who do follow me and have the books, read the books, study the books. But also, I've received in the last week or so, I have received at least 3 or 4 messages from people, women, ladies, the real midnight riders who are getting credit this time around in history. There were a lot of midnight riders back in the Revolutionary War that were women. At least 3 to 4 women, I have to go back and check, I think it was 4, have said that your documents and also your books have helped me wake up my family, and one was a boyfriend, and the others were just friends and family. That is called empower in the right way, not coercion, not persuasion. See, it's not my job or role to persuade people to coerce you to say, hey, love President Trump. Why? Because I do. No. Laws and orders. We are a nation of laws and orders. And when you know the law as it sits is neutral as it's supposed to be, and the way it reads and the way it was prescribed, then you have the what? You have a civil authority, responsibility, and a duty to decide, does this law represent the nation, if it's a federal law, and then if you're in a certain state, maybe it's a state law. Then if you're in the state of Montana, you have a law that says certain thing. Then you go, well, this don't support us, the people. Then you do what? You voice that to whom? Your representative. Every person needs to be on the same page with the laws and the orders. And when all of our voices sound the same, when all of our voices have one heartbeat, that is how our nation functions, thrives, operates. That's how the laws and orders operate. But even Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going to quote it here, even Abraham Lincoln quoted this, and I'm going to read it word for word. The best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly. He said, he elaborated that while bad laws should be repealed, they should still be followed for the sake of example, stating. He stated this, while they continue in force for the sake of example, they should be religiously observed. But see, if the people, we the people, our most coined motto in United States history, we the people, if we the people knew what was going on before that law got passed by a bad legislator who did what? Legislated over your true power, your true governorship, because we the people means we are the government. So if a legislator is passing something that doesn't represent we the people, then they did what? They took the law into their hands. What have you seen the last 150 years? Atrocious. So some of you had to be woken up. I like using words like that. Woken up, slang. You had to be awakened with something that you're like, what in the world are we doing? Finally got you engaged. Well, you're finally paying attention. Have you ever heard a teacher or a coach out there? You've heard it before. Everybody's heard this before. There was always one who just couldn't get right. And then the coach or someone say, well, do I have your attention now? After maybe, let's say you're in a field, in a pasture, and you touched a hot wire. And you had told them not to touch that. Hey, don't touch that wire right there. It's live. It's hot. Don't touch that one. They weren't paying attention. They walked right over there. Bow! I have your attention now? See how that works? So see, when you don't know what you're supposed to know, you see how ridiculous you sound when you don't even know what you're supposed to know? And you're out here yelling, complaining, fussing, griping. You can't even name one single word from one single sentence, from one single paragraph, from one single law. And there are state laws and federal and military. You see why I laugh at ankle biters? Now, there's a time to call them out. There ain't no doubt. So, mainstream media are under a wartime order. So if you don't know the 40,000 foot view of military law, federal law, how they conjoin and how they work together and operate together, because they're separate entities. So if you don't know the four ways they pair, which are executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties, then you're definitely not going to know that, oh, one of the statutory powers of declaring a national emergency comes with restricting telecommunications, which is Title 47, Section 606. You know what Title 47 is? Your communications. And it's going to address your FCC and a Team Telecom and all these different things. So you're not going to know what a wartime occupation is, what a wartime declared occupation is, if you don't know any of these things. And at this point where we are, December the 4th, 2025, where we are right now, you should have known this somewhere right in here. Or your friends and family, not you true patriots. You know, these podcasts are for people who are still like on the fence or, you know, just need a little wake-up call every now and then. You should have known this way back here. Not only should have known, but you could have known. So see, you're already here, and if you're still mad, bitter, upset, whatever you are, anything negative, you're there on the shore. You're the moron that went to the bathroom a little too long or whatever you were doing. Then you come back and the ship is already, you're like, whoa, hey, I'm supposed to be on that ship right there. You're the one standing back there going, hey. When you were given a time, a schedule, hey, here's your itinerary. You got this amount of time to go to the bathroom. Or if you don't need to go to the bathroom, then there may be a little shop there that you can go in. And here's your itinerary. You're the one that didn't look at that itinerary. Or you just skimmed over it and thought you had it. And then you walk back. Where did everybody go? See, that's what you look like to people like me. Now, I'm still here for you, but I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not your husband. I'm not your son, your nephew, your cousin. So I'm not gonna sit here and put powder on your behind and oh, it'll be okay. No, sometimes some of you need a little kick, a little swift kick in the rear end. Get your head out. You know what? Stop acting like a liberal. You don't want to look like them. You don't want to be treated like them. You don't want to be talked down to it like. Stop acting like them. I mean, they look atrocious. Libtards are on a whole other planet right now. Atrocious. They better be glad that I don't have the title Supreme Commander Derek Johnson, because I'm going to tell you what, I would be deporting. Liberals would all be gone, and I'd already be on the layers of rhinos and people who call themselves Republicans. Out of here. Yeah. So another thing I've noticed too, and then I'm about to let her rip. Old Tater Chip's about to rip here. All right. But another thing I've noticed on my pages, I'll post something. I'll post something about, hey, look at this one little thing. The comments are somewhere in La La Land, not even on what Simon said. You remember the game, Simon says to take one step forward. Take a step forward. Simon says, and then you hit the ones, you don't say Simon says, you say take 2 steps front. The one who took, Simon didn't say so. It sounds silly, but even something as simple as that game, as Simon says, people do what? They don't listen on every command. So I can tell by the comments and I can tell by the messages I receive if you're reading, studying what you're supposed to read and study, which is provided on my pages. And that's all I do. That's all I talk about. And if you're watching a million different podcasts, you're only hurting yourself. You don't need anybody else. If they're not talking, the laws and the orders currently in vogue, they are also the targets to be removed and deplatformed, because we cannot sustain into the future with people who just want to talk about everything and anything, and 99.9% of it does not reflect what President Donald John Trump's doing, what the military is doing lawfully. It doesn't reflect that. If you want to yell something that's such a terminology or a phrasing such as this is unlawful or don't do this, you need to know what the law says. 99.9% of all these out there yelling, kicking, cussing, fussing, and all that, and saying that's unlawful and this, they ought to be tried with sedition. Even the lowest level civilian out there should be hit with sedition, because all they're doing is disgracing every memorial grave across this land. Every man and woman who has ever taken the fall in uniform, that we all raised our right hand to Title 10 or Title 32. The oaths are the same. The Constitution reads the same. The Declaration of Independence reads the same. Our regulations read the same. Our Title 10 reads the same. Our Title 32 reads the same. It's all the same. So when you have one portion saying it says this and the other portion, no, it does not. It does not. It reads as neutral as possible. Therefore, you got to know what? The foundation, the origin, and the ideologies of why it was written. Why it was written. The why tells you the how it is applied. See, we have a terminology problem in this nation. We have a verbiage and a terminology problem in this nation. Why is not a how, and how is not a why. But they can lead to each other. They can support each other. They can back each other. Sometimes one's ahead of the other. Sometimes this one's ahead of this one. We have a terminology and a verbiage problem in this nation. For example, now we're getting to the meat of the subject here. President Trump's post about, he said canceling. That's what the media is saying, is canceling. You don't cancel an executive order. You revoke it or you can rescind it. The executive orders with a national emergency have an automatic termination on it, because the national emergencies portions comes with all those 120 statutory powers. Therefore, they would need a termination. And a national emergency with an executive order has an automatic year termination, 2 year, depending on how you want to interpret what it's read in 1976 law, but it automatically terminates. So you wouldn't even have to do anything. Just let it terminate. But what you will see if and when it happens, I don't think it's going to be that, because the whole thing's been in operation. But President Trump said all executive orders, all executive documents, all executive actions, all proclamations, all everything, legal documents. When you have a revocation of a executive order, you'll see a revocation. It will say revoked on the Federal Register where they're published. So far, as of right now, there's nothing beside any of quote-unquote Joe's that says revoked. So far. Now, however many executive orders that would have been visual to the public, I have to go back and do the math that they showed quote-unquote Joe sign. But with today's technology and the computer, it shouldn't take that long to put revoked beside it. Either way, it still validates the operation, but what's going to make it even more cherry on top is that there's nothing that ever says revoked beside it, because none of that was real. Now, let's go back to the 2020 debate. This proves everything right here. Now, President Trump is the face of this operation. He's just the face. All right, now he's smart, witty, humorous, you name it, and he was perfect for this operation, but he's just the face of it. Keep in mind, generals and admirals are running this show, and he's a strong suit side by side also doing so. But President Trump is a delegator. He don't know all the laws and orders. He don't know all of them personally himself. He's even admitted to this. He mentioned about the one of his advisors, this is 2 or 3 years ago now, but one of his advisors he mentioned showed him the statute about the statues out there, about the protection of statues and things. Well, he is a delegator, which is perfect because that promotes empowerment. That promotes raising up people under you and validation, but also it makes you feel good, right? If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for God and country, laws and orders, then that shows that this staffer, this advisor was doing what? Reading what they're supposed to read, know what they're supposed to know, just like what I'm doing with the laws and orders. That's not a slander towards President Trump. I've seen people try to make it that. I'm like, no, it's not. Him being a delegator, you can't know everything. But everybody together can know a little bit of something, and that becomes your teamwork. So in the 2020 debate, this thing right here solves everything. If you'll listen. All right? If you'll listen. President Trump didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2025. He wouldn't be the threat right now. If we were in the days of old, listen to me now, if we were in the days of old, that every 4 years, every 4 years, every 4 years, even if the president got 8 years, every 8 years, wouldn't matter. 4, 8, doesn't matter. If we were in the days of old, then all the quote-unquote Democrats would have to do is just sit back and go, all right, we need a strong game plan of how we're going to take back the nation. That's all they would need, is a strong game plan of how they were going to take back 2028 leading into 2029. That's all they would need. Because in the old system, outside of your 1951 violation of the Constitution, when Congress put term limits on the president but not themselves, because there's nothing in the Constitution that says term limits anywhere on that subject. But in the days of old, and what people have perceived all these years, people have perceived, because people don't know the Constitution, so people have perceived that the president has term limits. So let's go by people's perception. I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's go by people's perception. By perception, all the Democrats would need is a plan. And by perception, this is President Trump's last hurrah. By perception. Last stand. Which means in 3 years, he'd be gone anyways. Therefore, if we were in the days of old, they'd be able to go back in and revocate all of President Trump's executive orders, terminate national emergencies, abolish everything that President Trump has done, and basically flip it. But listen to what I just said. President Trump didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2025. He became the threat when he rolled down the escalator June 16th, 2015. And he really became the threat November the 8th, 2016, when he became president. Then that real threat went into action January the 20th, 2017. That's when all of the laws were fundamentally reset, but also all the unique laws and orders that invoked this special and strategic operation, that's when he became the real threat. So how come on the 2020 debate, President Trump called out, quote unquote, Joe? Now, Joe had already been replaced. For those of you who know, we know. We just know what we know. And I know what I know for other reasons as well. But we're all in this together, right? I'm not better than you. So we're going to play this right here on this level. President Trump called out Joe, Hunter, the millions from, remember the Moscow's wife? Remember that terminology? Moscow, Russia. Russia, Ukraine, China, $636 pages. In July of this year and August of this year, now I know it's the replacement for quote-unquote Hunter, but for the people who don't know that yet, they showed quote-unquote Hunter Biden on 2 different interviews. They got millions of views. And guess what they confirmed on there? The timeline in here. It specifically shows Rudy Giuliani receiving a copy from the FBI. And Rudy took it to this group who comprised, they made this book, 636 pages of all the filth. Filth of child trafficking, sex trafficking that was found on Hunter's laptop. All the phone conversations, all the text messages, all the emails, it's all linked, everything. It's also already on all, I'm going to upload it later. Post it, don't have to upload it. But they already have it on the National Archives, all the emails. Oh, why haven't you heard that? Why haven't you even heard any about that? They have Burisma, Rose Seneca. They have everything up. It's already on the National Archives. See, patriots don't have patience. Your justice is coming. You're supposed to know everything in between. President Trump exposed Hunter, Joe, the whole deal. And then Joe, for the people that thought he was real then, I know he wasn't, but again, playing devil's advocate here, Joe lied to the world and said, my son did nothing wrong. Said he didn't do any of that. The whole world witnessed this. If Joe was real, and if Joe was really president, if Kamala was real, and one step further, all of those that thought Obama was pulling the strings behind the scenes, Republicans especially, who don't know a single line, single word from a single line, from a single paragraph, from a single law. President Trump was the threat then. And he exposed Joe on world TV in a debate. Now, it was all staged. Again, it's hard to make this because I want to make that clear. Already been knowing this. But we're talking about the threat. President Trump was the threat then. And this also shows that the 2020 election was not, quote unquote, stolen. President Trump uses those terms for other operational reasons. It was, quote unquote, stolen because it was part of the whole operation. One, to allow the setup of the government in exile, and also puppet government to allow the military to operate lawfully with unique strategies and tactics that help clean out the whole swamp buy more time. President Trump in 4, back 4, in 4. The back was a strategic plan. He never went away. It was a strategic, unique, irregular, unconventional warfare tactic where he became your supreme commander, where he became the wartime president. There's that one portion of it. The other portion was to expose, quote unquote, Joe, and also show you, the people, what you had with President Trump, who said everything he said, he went in and implemented, he backed it. Then when you see a president say everything he said and do everything he said he would do, then you don't have that anymore. Then you already witnessed what can be done, and it can be done, and it most certainly can stay that way. So there's part 2 of that layer. So you didn't have that anymore, and you've already witnessed all the things that Obama and all these people said. What does he have, a magic wand? And all, you already saw everything he said, and those people said was impossible, you saw was possible. So that was part 2. The other portion of the quote-unquote stolen election was this right here. When quote-unquote Joe was perceived to the world as quote-unquote in power, Joe, Kamala, and those who thought Obama was behind the strings, guess what didn't happen? They didn't revoke a single anything by President Trump that is part of the operation. It shows quote-unquote revocations of certain things, but not Title 10, not Title 32 military orders, and also executive orders with national emergencies that have implications of the military operation. So if you get hung up on, Biden rescinded the 1776 commission where President Trump's going to put our history back in schools, you're missing the point. Why would anybody want to revocate an executive order that was going to put history back in our schools? See, every intricate detail had a portion, meaning a compartment to it. You got to compartmentalize it. But he never terminated, for the people who thought he was real, never terminated the bigger orders. Title 10, Title 32, and all these executive orders that are doing all these different things with telecommunications, tariffs, DOGE, deporting illegal migrants, all right? All those executive orders still intact. So see, when you know the bigger picture and the bigger implication, it's what, quote-unquote, Joe, for the people that thought he was real, it's what he didn't do that proves the military operation, military government, military occupation, continuity of government, continuity of operations, government exile, and also puppet government. So all President Trump had to do was enforce the law as it sits on paper. That alone exposes everything. It exposes all the quote-unquote deep state, what they call diplomacy. Real simple. All right? So now, 1941 to 1941 to 2016. There's a timeline I show. 1941, the War Powers Act of 41 and 42. Those were amended in 1973. Those amendments, what President Trump has done is taken all, and he's just a face now, but he's going to get credit for it because that's the way people perceive the presidency. But it's really the generals, the admirals. So they have taken everything that the deep state tried to do to take away power from the president. They have taken those very things and flipped it on them and used it against them. So when you know what the War Powers Resolution is, and guess what's happening right now? Now, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey is someone I go on with once a month on a minimum. All right, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey from Australia, Special Operations. He forwarded the books. All right, he's one of the forwards of the books. Special Operations now. Lieutenant Colonel Bosey. He told you, and he has told you on podcasts that I've been with, Special Operations, we're 3 to 5 to 6 weeks ahead of everything. We're 3 to 5 to 6 months ahead of everything, and 3 to 5 to 6 years ahead of everything, depending on the layer, depending on what it is. They are just now in the quote-unquote media talking about the War Powers Resolution Act. What have I been talking about for the last almost 4 years? I'm the only one who's talked about the War Powers Resolution Act. I'm the only. I'm the only one who says Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. I'm the only. Congress in 1973 tried to put limitations on the president. Nixon vetoed it. Congress overrode the veto with the 2/3 vote and passed the 1973 War Powers Resolution Act. Now, if that don't tell you right there, and every president since then, whether you thought they were good or bad, doesn't matter, time will tell that. But every president since the 73 War Powers Resolution Amendment of 73, every president said that it was not a good thing. Because Congress made it to where a president had to declare a national emergency and then give Congress the use of military in 48 hours. Had to give a report. This is what I'm doing. 48-hour window. In that War Powers Act itself, it tells you straight up that the president has 60 days and then an additional 30 days to use the military. So a total of 90 days. After that 90 days, Congress has to step in. Did you just hear what I just said? I love talking like this as if there's someone sitting in front of me and they're going, yeah, I heard you. And I'm like, all right, repeat what I just said. Listen to what I just said now. The War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. The president declares a national emergency to get to use the military. He has 60 days, and then he has an additional 30 days extension. After that 90 days, Congress has to step in. So, if it was against the law, first and foremost, why is it still in the law books? So that's the first thing. Every law that President Trump's been using, law, not order, law, the foundation. Every law he's been using is older than 1995. Older than 1995. Now let me make sure something real quick. I'm going to see something in my notes. Yeah, I'll do it right now then. This is a good time to do it. So that War Powers Resolution Act proves everything. Right now, as we speak, if you went to mainstream articles, CNN, AP, all of them, they're saying, Tim Kaine, right? This is all distractions for the people who don't know what's going on. So if you're a patriot, you're not supposed to be reacting whatsoever. But Tim Kaine said that they're going to block the U.S. military without an authorization of Congress. Block the U.S. military operations without an authorization of Congress. So all of you who have been watching me, follow me for almost 4 years, you've heard me religiously use Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That Section 1550 is from the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020, which is the defense budget. And it has nothing to do with 2020 because they can be continued, the action. So that 2020 has nothing to do with that. It's just when it was put into place. But it was put into place December the 20th, 2019. If you go read that clause specifically, it tells you in there, not later than the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, the President is to report to the Defense Committees the use of regular and irregular forces. To the whom? Those committees. Of who? Congress. You know what Title 50 is, ladies and gentlemen? Title 50 is War and National Defense. You know where that stemmed from? The National Security Act of what? 1947. How many of you were alive in 1947? That's how old this is. Chapter 33 of Title 50 is the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. Section 1550 is in Chapter 33. But it specifically tells you in the codification, specifically says it's temporary, which means it's what? Strategic. Which also means what? It's not for future presidents, which means what? It's strategic. It's pre-planned. It's only for this particular operation. Which is why in the bottom now, you've also heard me say time-stamped. You've also heard me say the executive document in the bottom, and you don't have to scroll. You don't even have to scroll. It's like one little quick, that quick. The page is only like that. In the bottom, executive document would be quote-unquote Joe for all the people out there who could have stumbled on this and known to go to the Federal Register and known what to click on. It was a visual for them to be distracted still, especially if they didn't know everything else. The laws and orders here, the laws and orders here, military, federal, all right, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, all of what I talk about. Most people don't know that because they just think a law is for this and they don't even know what the law is for. So this executive document, for the layman's terms and for the people out there that thought all this was real, that executive document specifically reads, I hereby delegate the authority and functions vested in the President of 1550 to the Secretary of Defense, now the Secretary of War. This was quote-unquote Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. relinquishing all his authority and powers, which would be command, meaning Commander-in-Chief, to the Secretary of Defense. And it said what? Of the President of 1550. Who was President December the 20th, 2019? That's exactly what it's reading. And the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, is directly under the Commander-in-Chief. I guess that's also why the most recent, to date, December the 4th, 2025, the most recent order of succession within the Department of then Defense, now War, is from December the 10th, 2020. Every president has had an order of succession with the National Security, Department of War, except for whom? Quote-unquote Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. 3 days before that order of succession, the most recent, the last, however you want to phrase it, 3 days before that, December the 7th, 2020, was what? The invocation of Executive Order 13961, which is the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy by President Donald John Trump, which is what? Continuity of government. So now let's do the math. So December the 20th, 2019 to July 19th, 2021, that's when that executive document was put into the War Powers Resolution Act. In the section 1550, the executive document of quote-unquote Joe was put there July 19th, 2021. December the 20th, to July 19, 2021. You know how many days that is? Business days? 406 business days. What is the War Powers Resolution Act? Read again. That the president has 60 days with a 30-day extension, and after that 90 days, Congress has to step in. So, what are all the military doing in the Caribbean Sea? And I have document, recorded proof of our aircraft all over the Caribbean from December the 20th, 2019 to July 19th, 2021. And I have them in the Caribbean from July 19th, 2021 to present day. See why it pays to know your laws and orders? Because everything that the media is screaming right now, I know it's all wartime orders, and that's to get people engaged, get them paying attention, get them focused on what we're about to hit you with. It's called the bait, and then we're going to switch somewhere down here. We're going to bait you, then we're going to switch on you. Liberals, they're baited, and they're, oh, he can't do this, and this is against the law, he's a traitor, he's a this, and baited, got him, gonna hit him. Do you know whose name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act, morons? Might want to go check out Supreme Court Docket 23-939. Might want to go check that out. That was filed last March, by the way, 2024. Might want to go check that out. Guess whose name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act? Osama Yo Mama Obama is not in the War Powers Resolution Act. And we have solid proof that Osama bin Laden was killed May the 2nd, 2011. But then we also have solid proof that he was not in Afghanistan. He was in Pakistan. Then we also have proof of the leader of Libya, who was quote-unquote assassinated just months after he appeared at the United Nations, and he stood there and he said, are we not going to investigate what happened to Saddam Hussein? He was America's friend until they killed him. And months after he stood there and said that, he was quote-unquote assassinated. You know when he was assassinated, ladies and gentlemen? October the 20th, 2011. I'm pretty sure that October 2011 comes after May 2011. And who was on trial on a little oath? Who was sitting there saying, what does it matter? They're gone. Who was that again? Hillary Rodham Clinton being asked questions about Libya, Benghazi. And who was the leader of Libya again? Gaddafi. Whose name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973? Obama. Who was the vice president of Obama again? Who was the Secretary of State again? We're running a military occupation on our own nation. President Trump has told you over and over, our gravest threats are not abroad, they're within. They're within. He said this on countless speeches in different various ways, different phrasing. We're battling evil people within, corruption within, frauds within. He's told you in so many different ways. Those were proclamations. Those were not just to, oh, get them, train it, da-da-da. No, those were also proclamations. Time-stamped, time signatures for history's sake. In 2020 as well, in that first 180 days, under that Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, in that first 180 days when President Trump federalized 1 million reserve components active duty, March 27th, 2020, via Title 10, Section 12302 and Executive Order 13912. Just 4 days before that, the media told you they're going to install a general in case the law breaks down. There's no such thing as that. That verbiage, that terminology, that don't mean that. That means military government, military occupation. That's what that means, terminology-wise. So the continuity of government, really fast on that. Established by President Eisenhower, who was a former 5-star general. All right, this rare 5-star general. President Eisenhower established the continuity of government in this thing called Presidential Emergency Action Documents. They could accompany each other. Can't have one without the other. All right. PEDs are draft classified between the President and the Department of Justice. Woo! Not Department of War. Department of Justice. PEDs. All right. And then your continuity government. Now, Eisenhower's original plan showed that during a restoration period, you would have businessmen and women. We'll include the women, obviously, but they said businessmen and military in positions of power. What have you seen President Trump do in ambassador roles? 99.9% of everybody he's nominated from ambassador roles, guess what they are? Successful businessmen and women and or military veterans. Do you know what majority of those veterans are? Navy SEALs, Special Operations. That's also why you saw rolling into the puppet government of quote-unquote Joe, the dash portion. That's why you saw that was not a constitutional inauguration whatsoever. Raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, violation of the 20th Amendment. There was no 21-gun salute soon after the raising of the right hand and taking that oath. All right, there were 3 cannons at Arlington. 4 cannons at Joint Base Andrews with President Trump. That's the 21-gun salute. That is a definition of a 21-gun salute. It's 4 cannons, 3 for fire and 1 for misfire. All right? And they told you that was the official presidential salute battery, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. They're the oldest unit in the United States Army, 1784. They didn't get that wrong, ladies and gentlemen. First time in U.S. history they showed 2 different cannon sets on January the 20th, 2020. It don't matter what year, January the 20th. But this time on January 20th, 2021, there was 2 sets of cannons shown. But the cannons for quote-unquote Joe were not after quote-unquote Joe swore in. 3 cannons at Arlington is not a 21-gun salute. And Arlington National Cemetery.mil says it so clear. It says that the 3-volley salute seen or heard at Arlington is not to be confused with a 21-gun salute. The 3-volley salute is a funeral. So this is why you've heard President Trump say we're an occupied country. In one speech, October last year, before the election, he specifically said we're an occupied country. We will soon no longer be an occupied country. The Great Liberation starts November the 5th. The Great Restoration starts on January the 20th. Now, if you go to the Law of Land Warfare, it's 248 pages PDF. Hit Control F and type in the term restoration. You will read at bullet point number 451. Now keep in mind the land of law warfare. Forms of non-hostile relations of belligerents. The conduct of war and the restoration of peace require certain non-hostile relations between belligerents. These relations are conducted through parliamentaries, military passports, safe conducts, safeguards, cartels, capitulations, and armistices. And you can read all about restoration. In this one publication, land of law warfare, you'll see puppet government, occupation, restoration. You'll see all the terminology that I talk about that outlines the 45-47. That President Donald John Trump validates and has validated in multiple speeches, but especially from 2022 to 2024. Because that was when it was perceived, quote unquote, by all the people who don't know a single word from a single line, from a single paragraph, from a single law, much less all the laws and orders, that quote unquote Joe was president. He was not. The whole thing's an operation. It's already been validated just a couple of days ago with President Trump's talking about all of anything that quote unquote Joe Autopian did is null and void. That's because that was the government in exile that he also just validated 2 months ago with the Turkish president, the exile comment. President Trump and the media from 2021, after the funeral service on January the 20th, 2021, after that to January the 19th, 2025, before you saw President Trump come back in office, even though it's all operational. But for the people that thought that he went away and he came back, doesn't matter. It wasn't that case. But all the terms that the media and President Trump have used out of their mouth and also in articles have been occupied country, white flag of surrender, capitulations, and puppet government. None of those are federal government anything. They are straight up law of war manual. So let me just rain on someone's parade really quick, just something fun, just to show you. This is why you better know when you draw a line in the sand and you stand on whatever side you stand on, you better be willing to stand on it. There was a particular person who used to follow me around on social media. And just, oh, the law of war manual is not for civilians, and I don't know why he's quoting this, it don't apply. Never told why President Trump is telling people in a press conference, which you are supposed to be watching, 94% of Americans are civilians. So why is President Donald John Trump talking to the percentile, 94 percentile, in nothing but military verbiage? See, this person never explained why President Trump is using all this terminology and the laws and the orders and the visuals reflect back. These support the visual, and President Trump is giving you the validation via proclamation. See, this is why morons out there, and I know who you are, moron. All I got to do is this. See, all these people were in 2022, 23, 24 when they thought that quote-unquote Joe was in, but they didn't know a single what? Single word from a single sentence of a single paragraph of a single law. Now they look dumb. Egg. It's more than egg. Big old pile of cow doo-doo all over their face. All right, so real quick. All these people out there about the National Guard. You'll hear all the low-level, low IQ out there, the ankle biters especially, talking about, their illegal laws and orders. First off, you got to know what a law reads. Not only do you have to know how it reads, but you got to know how it's made applicable. Right? How do you apply that? How do you enforce that? So all these people out there, especially the low-level libtards that aren't anybody, the ones that paying Elon $7 for their little blue check, that's also a moron. All these liberals are paying Elon $7 for their blue check. Do they not realize they're captured? Hey, we got your IP address, moron. We have your address. We have everything on you. And look what you're doing. You're writing seditious language and verbiage to the people. You're blatantly misleading people with your ignorance. So we got you already. And especially some of the things you're saying out there is beyond sedition. Better be careful. When we the people know the laws and orders and like the laws and orders, love the laws and orders, it's what we want to do with you, so be careful. Be careful what you wish for, as President Trump's told you before. So this proves everything right here. This is, if you'll listen to this section, this is if you want to screen record this portion, only this portion for your friends and family, then especially the veterans out there that may be argumentative and don't know the laws and orders invoked of which they served under, which is even more atrocious, then this is what you do. So, quote unquote Joe, first and foremost, Instagram pause. So first and foremost, military orders are not continuation orders. So let's get that straight out the gate. Military orders don't act like executive orders. Even though executive is your president, military orders are a commander-in-chief military order. Executive order is a president, not a commander-in-chief. So you got to be able to separate those terminologies. Same person, yes, but federal law and military law are separate entities. Now they can join a certain way, and yes, an executive order is one of the ways that it pairs with the military, but that's the enforcement portion. It's not how it's enforced or the tactics and the strategies, etc. You got to know that. The military order is the how we're going to enforce it. This is what we're going to do. Here's my executive. Here's how. This is the why. This is the how. All right, so remember the 2020 setup again? Why didn't quote-unquote Joe terminate one single military order, Title 10 or Title 32 by President Trump? If President Trump was a threat, he became the threat before 2025. So you would have abolished everything, terminated everything, rescinded everything, revoked everything. And if there was nothing, if the people didn't, revolt, I mean, like a war, civil war, whatever, then people would have gone along with it. Might have been mad, bitter, but there was nothing that quote-unquote Joe, the Hoettes, and quote-unquote Obama, for the people that thought he was back here, there was nothing they couldn't have done short of a civil war again. Because that would be your last line of resort in America, United States of America, based on how our foundation's set up. Because most people just go along because you don't know a single word from a single line, from a single paragraph of a single law. So quote-unquote Joe should have, if he was real, that's when they should have abolished everything by President Trump, was during the 2021 to January the 19th, 2025. They didn't do so. Not a single thing. So now you go to a military order. Let's go to a military command. In 2018 now, we're almost at 2026. We're almost 8 years past that. The order's still in place. Title 32, federal presidential call-up. Who was the president? President Trump. So there's no even if. You can't say, oh, well, even if it was a continuation order. You can't say that because it's not. Military orders have dates on them. They have times. Just like the War Powers Resolution Act, 60 days, an additional 30. And then Congress has to deem that the military can be used and that commander use the military. So 2018, you can't say, well, even if no, there's no even if. It's a Title 32 federalization presidential call-up because it's to do with federal elections. So the National Guard cyber security teams were at the 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024 election polls. Anywhere from 14 to 19 states were deployed everywhere. Cybersecurity teams. Under a Title 32 from 2018. So there's not a, well, why would Joe have the troops at the 2022, 2024? You can't even pose that question. I've done it in the past to get people's attention, to get you thinking, going, wait, that don't make sense. Why would the troops be at the polls 22 and 24 when the executive order for election interference with the national emergency declared by President Donald John Trump September the 12th, 2018, That's the executive portion. The Title 32, there's your why. Here's your how. There's no way to say, well, why would you? Because you can't. It's not possible. Military orders are not continuation orders. So the troops were at the polls, 22 and 24. The why and the how. The how, and then the why was because of Executive Order 13848 of the National Emergency. That is still active to this day. So now you ask the question. Here's how you ask why. Why would quote unquote Joe continue Executive Order 13848 with the National Emergency? That's for election interference. Because the how, that Title 32, is operating with this executive order with the National Emergency declared for election interference. So those National Guard cybersecurity teams, guess what they're doing? They're tracking where the votes are added, deleted, real, not real. The what? Integrity. That's why they call it election integrity. In 2020, November the 4th, four-star general told the whole world, hey, we have our National Security Command and we have our Cybersecurity Command operating with joint partners around the world for Election Day. Around the world? So that one order alone shows you that quote-unquote Joe was not real, wasn't president. And President Trump's tweet, all the autopin, every aspect, null and void, because it wasn't real in the first place. So this is one notch closer to getting to your disclosure that what the autopin is and was. Proclamation 9844, February the 5th, 2019. Now, if you went to Google at that time period and still will tell you that, oh, Joe terminated Proclamation 9844 from February the 5th, 2019. Well, where's his Title 10 or Title 32 order for the troops at the border? Where's his proclamation? So when you know that, and there's not any, then you got to go and say, okay, well, how were the National Guard at the border in February 2024 when President Trump went down there in February 2024? President Trump was the only person with any presidential title whatsoever to go to Del Rio, Texas. This subject and the topic and the main location that the media focus on from 21 to 25. But really, obviously 21, 22 when it was real heavy with the border. 23, 24, but the 24 visuals. So, where's quote-unquote Joe's title? President Trump's the only person with a presidential title that was seen at the border. But most of the world thought he was a quote-unquote former president. If he was a former, let's address that first. If he was a former, that would have been a breach of national security of a sitting president. If quote-unquote Joe was real, President Trump would have been violating national security. It would have been a complete breakage of his own Executive Order 13848 with the National Emergency declared because it was an election year. And then you also would have had, you could have charged him with a few other things of Title 18. Could have been a seditious act to overthrow the government because of what he was saying would be in a war. He told you down there this is a military operation twice. Then he said we've been invaded. So you could have hit him with sedition, which is Title 18, which is federal law. So how did 14 states deploy to Texas a week before President Trump and a week after was there? And then how is it so difficult to comprehend that President Trump was the only person seen at the border with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas? The adjutant general gives it away. The adjutant general reports to the governor unless what? Oh, we have a president standing here. The world thinks he's former, but he's the only one here. But the governor and you, adjutant, report to the governor unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Title 10 is presidential only. A president. Well, why does the web, the World Wide Web, the internet, why does it say that quote-unquote Joe terminated Proclamation 9844, which had the Title 10 order in it of President Trump? Oh, because of President Trump's post just 2 days ago, yesterday, whenever it was, where it said all of anything that the auto pinned in is null and void? Because it never was void. It never was, well, it wasn't even active, void. It wasn't none of those because it wasn't even real. None of it was real. I need to just sit here like this. I need to just look like I'm from like the 1990s. Like I'm like Vanilla Ice or something like this. I just do like this the whole time. I mean, none of quote-unquote Joe was real. None of it. All actors, all actresses, using CIA tactics against them. Then the Supreme Court said President Trump can use the 1798 Aliens Act, which has another portion to it, seditions. All right? So all these blue checks out there on X, they're committing sedition, most of them. When they say it's unlawful that President Trump's using strikes in Venezuela, well, how come in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, how come there is a launching of the Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation, April the 1st, 2020, by the Southern Command? What's in the newspapers right now, even though it's not newspapers anymore, but let's just have some fun. What's in the news right now? All the verbiage of what? Venezuela, enhanced counter-narcotics, and the Western Hemisphere. All that verbiage is popping up, along with what? The War Powers Resolution Act. Well, let's go look again. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, the clause says not later than 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days. The President is to do what? Report to the whom? Defense committees of the House and the Senate, the what? The use of regular and irregular forces to whom? Congress. In that first 180 business days, President Trump federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. The launching of this operation, the Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation, on April the 1st, 2020, with 22 joint partners by Southern Command, April the 1st, 2020. 30 days later, which was really 29 days later, but 30 days into April, Executive Order 13919, President Donald John Trump gave a direct order to whom? The Secretary of Defense, to be equal authority to federalize the National Guard. Selective reserve, the reserve portions though, selective reserve to active duty. What does it read in that executive order? What are they talking about right now? In that executive order 13919, it says the Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation where? In the Western Hemisphere. Brackets, the whole thing's in operation. I would never color on it, but if you could draw a little circle around it, the whole thing is in operation. Put a box around it, the whole thing's in operation. This whole Venezuela thing did not start recently. They call it Operation Southern Spear. No. The War Powers Resolution Act of 1973, Section 1550, is exactly what they have all these quote-unquote politicians just now talking about. Guess what was invoked in Executive Order 13919? Title 10, Section 12304, not 2. You know what 12304 is? 1, Title 10 is presidential, again. But 12304 must have 2 years in advance, 2 years, for funding purposes. So let's see. Let's do our math here. So you have, that would be in 2020. So 2022. But they'd already launched it. So that means that the command, that was your command. So that means that you go back, right? They started the funding. Oh, that's right. See, Executive Order 13773 was way back here in 2017. Well, now that makes sense. You go to Executive Order 13773, which is your transnational crimes, and you'll see that on the what? Department of whom? Not War, but on Justice. Oh, what does a presidential emergency action document have to have with it? Is the president and whom? Department of Justice. So 1773, and you go read the Executive Order 13919 from April the 30th, 2020. Pretty sure that that's 2 years there. And then you have your war time authorization, because again it says the president only has 90 days. So how come there's no revocation of any of these executive orders? There's nothing in that executive document that is updated or says this is rescinded or terminated. So that's when you know that Congress, they're under a continuity of government. So see, Congress right now don't even really matter in another way. So what's, oh, Congress did this and this representative did this and that. No, they did not. They didn't do a thing. They're not in a regular. If they were in a regular, those of you remember this. You remember the little show C-SPAN where they show them on the floor and they're passing bills all day? How many of you used to watch C-SPAN? Oh, I hear crickets. For some reason, I think I hear crickets. Yeah, C-SPAN. Have you seen any of this? Have you, when in the last 8.5 years have you seen Congress on the floor doing anything? Daily, weekly, when they're in session? Hello? That alone also proves the whole thing is an operation. 45-47. All right, now let's go to your mainstream media. They're under wartime orders. Title 47, Section 606. Restricting telecommunications is an emergency power. So some validations real quick before we get to the laws and the orders of it. Some validations are the Associated Press have been banned by President Trump from appearing at where? The White House and Mar-a-Lago. So how's the Associated Press even reporting anything right now? They got to be doing what? Copying what they're getting from other networks, because they're not even allowed at the White House or Mar-a-Lago. You've seen CNN get hammered. You've seen NPR and PBS lose their funding. You've heard President Trump hammer the New York Times. He's hammering them still right now. You're hearing all that. The View. All of you out there, oh, The View, these women, blah, blah, blah. You ain't even paid attention. They're under investigation. FCC. So see, you need to know what's taking place. Don't get wrapped up in all the drama and the propaganda. Get wrapped up in how you take out these morons. You have that power, you have that authority, because we the people are the actual government. President Trump told you January the 20th, 2017, we're taking the power out of D.C., giving it back to you the people. Well, you don't need to be looking like a chicken with your head cut off, like a banty rooster. You know, like you're looking wackadoodle out there. You need to know the basic simplicities of the functions and operations of a small government, the representatives that represent us. All right, so what you got to do is go read Executive Order 13800, 13873. That's where the national emergency was declared by President Trump. One of the 8 that quote-unquote Joe continued. That's the one that's restricting the telecommunications. So why would quote-unquote Joe continue an executive order with a national emergency that's terminating all of the mainstream media? Now, you didn't see terminations of the mainstream media in 21, 22, 23, but what you did see in 2024, you saw PBS and NPR already losing their funding then. I thought, quote unquote, Joe was the president. So, see, Executive Order 13873, that's your why. Your how. Well, you're seeing the how happen. You're seeing all these people being terminated. They're being canceled and terminated, losing their funding. So, Executive Order 13913. Guess what? Guess when that was? That was immediately, I hope you're listening out there, Executive Order 13913 would have been after those two, first off, but it's immediately after 13912, which federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty, the very next executive order. Between the order that federalized the reserve components, the 1 million, and the Title 10 12304, April the 30th, for your functions and all the other things that's going on with Venezuela, etc., in the Caribbean. Executive Order 13913, totally different area of communications, right? This established Team Telecom. Team Telecom. They're the ones who do the terminations. Why would quote unquote Joe continue all the things that they call President Trump a Nazi, a king, and a dictator? They contribute. If you want to believe they're real, then guess what? They contributed to their own demise and their own takedown. That's exactly how the law reads, operates, and functions. This is why it pays no laws and orders. Again, the very thing that Congress, through the years in the past, tried to limit the president on is the very thing that's coming back, biting them in the rear end, and taking down their own bullcrap. Because, see, when you make up laws and you make up things that aren't really law and aren't really a good law, if you want to call it a law, when you make up crap and you try to do things to gain your own power, guess what? The very thing that they used to limit what they thought was limiting is the very thing that's biting them in the rear end. So that's why all President Trump, in a reality, in a real setting, all he would have had to done is, which is what they've shown you, but it's an operation, was just straight up enforce the law as it reads. Well, this is how you wrote it. If it's against the laws, all you moron libtards out there, if it's against the law, then why did you leave it in the law? This is how stupid they are. You have to use the term stupid. It's not ignorant. Ignorant can be educated. Stupid is when you just keep saying the same things and you're told, hey, look, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like the law. You don't have to like the orders, but your people left it in law. It's just so humorous. It's so hilarious. So humorous. So all these things to do with the quote-unquote assassination. By the way, all of you that get your feathers ruffled, can you please tell me where Charlie Kirk is buried to this day? I'm waiting. I'm still waiting. Where's Charlie Kirk buried? Why is Erica dabbing her eyes all the time? Why didn't she do that the 2 or 3 days later? When she came out there looking like a diamondback rattlesnake, like, oh, these people thought they could get me down, I'll show you something. Why did they even have her speak then? Why did they have her speak just days after, quote unquote? And then, no tears, no nothing, none of that. Now all of a sudden, where's he buried? Simple question. Where is he? So everything that looks like a quote-unquote assassination, when you have laws and orders that outline a military operation, military government with irregular and unconventional warfare strategies, you can say it's bullcrap, you can say insensitive, oh, people died, You can do all whatever you want to do, boo-boo. That's on you. But when the laws more than clearly outline something greater than even humanity, when it's something this big, complex, strategic, pre-planned, you can say whatever you want to say. You can call names, you can ridicule, mock, you can do the same thing that everything they do to President Trump, to me, or anybody for that matter. You can do that. But when the laws read exactly what they read, and every day I'm validated, every week I'm validated, every month I'm validated, and at this point, yearly, I've been validated. There are so many I have not been proven wrong. And it's not about me being right, but it's about the fact that this is an operation. The way you want to validate it, you got to read, study, and comprehend it. But when the law reads, this is bigger than federal, it's military, and it's a military government, military occupation, the only way you're going to know that is to read, study, comprehend it, because it most certainly is. It most certainly outlines that way. And let me tell you again, it's hard to have a #1 bestseller. It is not easy whatsoever. Even on Amazon, it's not easy. All right, these are not #1s for nothing. They outline the whole thing. And part 2 is even bigger, obviously you can tell. This is all special operations. Strategies, how you think, critically, strategically, etc. But when there is most definite, definitive, absolute proof and validation of a military government, military occupation, military operation via irregular and unconventional warfare, then you got to know those, but then you can make them applicable. Just like on page 11 of the 2016 Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, the term assassination. Now look, some of you were born then, so do your math. In 1966, not long after JFK had said that guerrilla warfare needs to be a part of our military day in, day out, because our enemies are going to use it. Our enemies are going to use everything they can to one-up us. So we need to develop that, we need to implement that, and we need to practice that, and we need to be the domineering factor of that. That way we can keep them suppressed, and they never reach a certain point, because we are lethally trained in these guerrilla tactics and guerrilla warfare. Therefore, they can't ever get a foothold or one up on us. President JFK wrote this April the 11th, I think it was, 1962. And it was just put in the 2023, October the 7th, 2023 Special Operations Renaissance publication. Put the letter of JFK talking about guerrilla warfare. Very key. Now in 1966, which would have obviously been after, quote unquote, 63, obviously, what did you see take place? Special operations, which is separate from the federal government, military separate again. Keep that in mind. You better thank God that it is. You better thank God that we can act without the government. If they absolutely go against all grains of our fabric and our foundation and our origin of our military first in this nation, you ought to read special operations. I'm going to read it for you just because. But paragraph right above what I'm about to talk about, again, Figure 2 below depicts the typical activities conducted by an insurgency or resistance movement. Most or all of the represented activities will be conducted by a successful resistance or insurgency, regardless of whether the United States government makes the policy decision to support it. And then it says specifically, the United States government support to resistance on conventional warfare is initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. But it's not the kind of executive order of the federal government. This is a different kind of executive order, which specifically ties to whom? Again, the president. So see, this is why it pays to know the president's power and authorities. And then it also pays to know, while we're here, when a national emergency is declared, there's 120 statutory powers that are open with every national emergency declared. Those 120 powers are whom? The president. This is why you don't need to be reacting to what the media is doing out there. Media are captured. But then the low-level hanging fruit that don't know what's going on lawfully, Republican and Democrat, they're out there looking like morons as well, when they have no idea whatsoever the power and the authority of a president with those statutory powers. President Trump could have never invoked one single national emergency, and guess what was open when he set foot in the quote-unquote D.C.? Guess what? Over 25 executive orders with national emergencies. So, see how the swamp's trying to limit the president? See how their little plot got spoiled? So that's why they're saying, oh, he can't do this, he can't do that, it's unlawful. Well, why did you leave it in law, morons? Why did you even establish it, morons? So see, some of their stuff, the ones that are real out there, they're only exposing themselves. Let them. And you're supposed to unfollow. Don't support them. Algorithms keep them in the face. Hit that unfollow button. Bye, Felicia. That's what you do to them. All right, so now, when you go to page 11 of the 2016 Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, it's got a pyramid on it. That pyramid was established, and the first one you can see it, I think I got it in the book, part 2 of the book, but on the bottom it says a certain term, agitation. In 1966, the pyramid for revolutions and resistance. How come that word agitation changed all of a sudden in the 2016 publication? How come that word, of all things, right before President Trump, but after he had rolled down the escalator and after the new law war manual was reissued, how come this word agitation moved to assassination? Let's read what it says. Assassination, forming favorable public opinion, advocating national cause, creation of distrust of established institutions. Now let's go back to what everybody's done forgotten about. Oh boy, you'll get your feathers all ruffled up for old Charlie Kirk, but you done forgot about what you thought you witnessed July 13th, 2024 with President Trump. Oh, the hell with President Trump getting shot all of a sudden. Oh, well, he didn't die. Right over your heads. Because you don't know what you could know. But you couldn't have known this because this is not even mainstream federal. This is special operations, special forces, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare. Butler, PA. Did it form a favorable public opinion? Did people get mad that the quote-unquote president was shot at? Right? He wasn't a president. He was a supreme commander. He is a supreme commander. All right, checkmate. That happened. Did it advocate a national cause? Yep. Did it leave the walls of Pennsylvania? Yep. The boundaries, the border? Yep. Sure did. Creation of distrust of established institutions. Did everybody start yelling at the FBI? Yep. CIA? Yep. Secret Service? Yep. Everybody. Local enforcement? Yep. Established institutions. So it did what? It engaged people on the topic of what they thought they witnessed, which is perfect. Because most of those people had never paid attention to that before anyway. Checkmate. Hashtag gotcha. That's what it was supposed to do. Got your attention. It woke many more up. Got their attention. Got them engaged. Started yelling and everything. But guess what? Just a couple days later, 11 days later, what have you heard me talk about before on my podcast? What happened 11 days later? They had the director of the Secret Service under oath. And what did she say? She was asked the question that President Trump received the same security that he would have received as a sitting president. And she said, well, no, it was a continuity of what? Government. tell you everything you need to hear. You just don't listen. Let them emotions and feelings get in the way. Let them little panties get in the wide. Then President Trump, out on the speeches after that, they tackled me so damn hard I came out of my shoes. They didn't tackle him. He fell down on his own. So see, he's not lying. So you had certain people out there then, oh, you saying President Trump? How can you support and say all this and then turn around and say he's not saying what he said? It's all said on purpose because it didn't really happen. When you know the laws and the orders and vote outline a special strategic operation, the whole thing's going to be accounted for in history. But they have to get people engaged. They have to wake people up. They have to get you involved to pull your weight in the future, because the few of us who have been knowing this the whole time, all these years, can't keep pulling all the weight in the future, or we're going to be right back in the swamp that quick again because of the laziness, because of the complacency, and the quote-unquote education. Americans, oh, I'm educated. Oh, man, remember 2020? Oh, you holier-than-thou nurses out there? Oh, my God. Love the good nurses, but there are a lot of, I'm a nurse. Are you a nurse? So just because you have a word nurse, I'm supposed to put this jab in my arm that's going to alter my DNA and alter everything to do with my genetics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it killed many, many, many people. Blood's on you, all of you, holier-than-thou. I'm educated on a man's education. Woo, don't get me started on 2020 now. That's the one that can show you everything. So that leads to also what Special Operations Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, we were all just talking 2 months ago on our monthly podcast. We were talking about what was leading into December. Now keep in mind, when you see me post us on the military panel, you got to keep in mind, Full Bird Colonel, who also wrote the foreword on this book, Full Bird Colonel, former Deputy Commander of Delta Force. You got to go read and study how big that is. Former Deputy Commander of Delta Force. Forward in my books. All right. Colonel Charles Sellers, who just launched a podcast as well. He's still getting everything set up. Colonel Sellers. All right. A colonel, a full bird colonel, is one step away from a general. The lieutenant colonels, they're still only 2 steps away from a general. But keep in mind, they all know generals, multiple generals and multiple admirals, and talk to them on daily, weekly, monthly basis. We also don't make predictions. We don't give dates and, oh, look at about this. But what they will do is say, well, indicators show bylaws and orders of what I outline. Indicators show with that plus what they know over here that more than likely you're going to see this leading into, etc. And what did we just say 2 months ago? What did we just say? Lieutenant Colonel Bosey told you specifically, you're going to see a lot more false flags coming up as we lead into what they're showing you. So Obama's talking a lot more trash. You got Walls from Minnesota now piping back up again, who lied about his rank to get the political gain. All right, so all these things are stirring back up again. All right, that is what? It's distractions, but it's also engagement to get people locked in and get them focused. Don't matter how mad they are, bitter, upset, for all that. They're focused because they're not knowing back here what's going on. We do, but they don't. So it's perfect. That's why you, if you're a patriot and you know what's going on, you don't need to be rattled. You need to be over there licking your chops and doing just like what we're doing right here. Be confident. Hey, we got this. This is all. You ain't seeing things. All right. So false flags. A false flag is like this. So I'm gonna lay it out again because I always try to find a new way to say things, and this is going to be my closing right here. But in an operation like this, You take all the laws and the orders, and the way you reset it is you use them the way they're written. But there are unique laws and orders that do invoke a military government, a military occupation, a continuity of government, and also continuity of operations. And then there are tactics under those strategies. Tactics would be your government in exile and your puppet government. Because it worked flawlessly, because majority of the people thought Joe was real and all that was real. You thought that was real, had no idea what you were witnessing and watching, which is going to be the element of surprise that not only exonerates President Trump on one side, but it's also going to make him, he really don't even need to be on Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore needs to stay intact. Right across from Mount Rushmore, if you've ever been there, right across from there is a mountain on the other side. The whole mountain needs to be President Trump alone. Nothing against the others. He needs to be over there. Because he, at this appointed time in history, said, yes, I'll be the face. I will take on the mockery, the ridicule, the hatred, and all those. I will stand there and I will take it. And I'll be right there with you. He's smart as well. He delegates and lets the commanders do what they're supposed to do in the military. He delegates, but then where he's pulled his weight is financially and the markets and what China's been doing all these years and what all these other nations, the European nations and the NATO, etc. That was his forte. He lets the military do what they're doing. That's where he pulled his weight. So he's not just a face on that side of things. But he delegates and lets the commanders. Pete Hegseth said this yesterday in the press conference. He specifically said he delegates. He has taken the chains off commanders and let commanders do what they're supposed to do, and we're getting all this done. Now, what they're doing is ending all these national emergencies that the deep state invoked from 1979 to 2016. Those 25-plus executive orders with national emergencies open. Iran, 1979, Yemen, way back, Yemen. So all the places that we've had airstrikes on, guess whose executive orders they are? The deep state. Venezuela, Obama. Yemen, Obama. Iran, Carter. President Trump talking about the Congo today on a post. The Congo, George Bush. Executive order, national emergency. This is that easy, ladies and gentlemen. So you take all those laws and orders, you enforce them the way they're supposed to be enforced. Then he had to go in and clean up all these that the deep state did. So naturally, Argentina was one of those who didn't capitulate. Venezuela didn't capitulate. Iran didn't capitulate. So we made them have to throw up a white flag of surrender. Right? We took out nuclear facilities. Same thing that's going on with Ukraine. Obama had 4 executive orders on Ukraine alone in 1 year. 3 of them in 1 month. See, all of these things are tied to whom? The deep state. So naturally they're going to say, oh, it's against the law. He can't do that. They're all their laws. They're all their orders. So when it comes to things like this is why you civilians have to let military be military. And if you really want to know, then you got to go do what? You got to not only know your federal government portion and your state government portion and the executive orders, national emergency, you got to know that. But then you got to know irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, and why we're still, as we speak, in a partial continuity government. The law shows that. So there's still going to be some distractions right now and pieces that are engaging certain people and also needed to be done because we have a massive group of Republicans and libtards who want to argue over every little thing and have no clue what's going on. So here's a false flag. So when you detain people, you're going to learn that. You're going to learn that all these senior level leaders were detained. President Trump in 2017, the first thing he did was go after all the senior level leadership first. All right? He said this. But he also said that the three-letter agencies, not everybody in them are corrupt. He said it's a senior level leadership. So they had to do it top down. Well, as they detained all these big faces, when you detain someone and then you use a CIA tactic and you use a body double and put the body double in, then the real person's back here detained is having to watch this operation. And President Trump has even told you in so many ways, he said, I have replaced people that were supposed to be president. He's told you. He said central casting over and over and over again. So those are all proclamations and time signatures, timestamps that are going to add up to whenever history and they disclose, but come to a close, but disclose everything. They're already starting that. When he's saying all the laws and orders now, all the executive orders, all the everything from the auto pen is null and void. So see, he had already talked about the auto pen earlier this year was a validation, and then the visual he put up of his face, the pen and his face and all the presidents, that was already validation. Now it's going a step further. Now he's saying all orders, all proclamations, all legal documents that were quote unquote signed by the auto pen are null and void. They have no legal effect. So that's leading to the bigger disclosure, right? Because I've already been proven correct this whole time, and it's not about me because I didn't write the laws and orders. I'm just showing you what is invoked, and I'm the only one that's done it, the whole 40,000-foot view. So the other 40,000-foot view is when you detain these people, you put them in a padded cell. I'm so sick of seeing all the quote-unquote list of who's been quote-unquote executed and all this other stuff. Until President Donald John Trump tells you, and the military tells you and shows you, you're following somebody that has no name. It's a .org or a .net and a .this. And there's not a .gov, not a .mil. That's all I use, or .gov, .mil. I use the official sources. And you should want the authorities, the proper authorities, to disclose this to the public. You should want that. Now, we know military what has happened behind the scenes, yes. But there's certain things that don't need to be discussed right now because the proper faces and authorities need to display that to the people because of their validation, but also the validation of everything else for integrity's sake. You can't create loopholes and expect to flip law and order back with integrity. If you loophole everything, and if you knew something before the commanders knew, then there's no integrity in that whatsoever. But when you detain these people, you put them back here, you put them in a padded cell, you put the TVs with fiber optics, which Gitmo was upgraded like nobody's business. There are hundreds of courtrooms. There are way more detainee portions, all right, that can hold more people. President Trump, this has all been validated. Articles have talked about the expansion, etc. Quote unquote, Joe did not terminate President Trump's executive order. He didn't revoke it. Executive Order 13823 from January the 30th, 2018, all right, that President Trump issued that revoked Obama's executive order to shut Guantanamo Bay down, all right, President Trump, his executive order is still intact. So when you detain people, you'd have TVs all in their cells with them fiber optics where there's no cords. They can't reach up there, grab it, concoct something to take themselves out, right? So you make these people have to watch their demise on TV. President Trump already knew what he signed up for. Come on, folks. President Trump knew right here, way back here before he was 45, what he was signing up for. When you know the laws and orders invoked more than clearly outline a strategic and special operation, President Trump knew he's going to be called names, Nazi, pedophile, king, dictator, threat. He knew that way back here. He already knew that because he knows this right here. It's like getting a die and rolling it in Vegas. Woo, baby. And you roll perfect, calling it. That's what this is. So, in a lawful manner, you make these people watch their demise, and then you give them a chance, even though they're evil, corrupt, committed crimes against humanity and all these things, they still have a conscience sometimes. Some of them have a conscience. So they'll do what? They'll confess to it. Even though they're still going to get punished, death penalty, etc., some of them will confess to it, which is what? The exoneration portion needed to exonerate President Trump. And when there's multiple people that's going to be exposed, and this is going to be a clean out like nobody's business of all time in world history, that is most definitely coming, because President Trump's told you military tribunals are coming, and also all roads lead to Obama, etc., etc., etc. And I know what's in the court dockets and all those other things. It ain't Republicans. It's not generals. It's not admirals. It's not military veterans. It's none of that. It's no special operators, no secret military, etc. No, none of those portions can exonerate President Trump. They can help add to it, but the ones who are going to exonerate him, polar opposite. The white flaggers, the capitulators, multiple layers of them. So, like I told you before, when all the libtards heroes start turning on them, and it's multiple, meaning plural, game over. It's already game over. Hillary's already congratulated President Trump on his actions with Iran. Bill, Bush, Jeb Bush. So it don't matter what you think about them personally. You got to look at the bigger picture. So all of the exoneration portion is already starting, and it's building. It's building to that moment of justice, that moment of the revelation, because President Trump's amped it up now with the all documents, all orders being null and void. Because that's going to lead to the other side going, all of them? You know, he terminated this, he revoked this, he revoked all of them. Right? So that's going to lead to pandemonium on the other side, on the low level, which is what? It's distraction for you, the patriot, but it's engagement for that side. It gets them locked and engaged. Doesn't matter what they're saying, how ugly they look, and all these other. Let it. That's what you want. You want them engaged, because this is going to be the combat. This is going to be the art of war. This is going to be President Trump. When he looks like he's going to lose, boom, gotcha. So, for example, one of those comments that I read earlier in the podcast about, oh, Derek Johnson, people are dying. How could you say this? Because it's an operation. The laws and orders show it. I don't know how many times I got to repeat it. There's almost so much validity in mic drop moments in this podcast alone that if you can't believe that, this ain't for you, boo-boo. Pickleball may be even difficult for you. If your brain can't comprehend some of the stuff, I don't even know of knitting. Knitting, I've watched people knit before. I'm like, that's even a complicated process. I don't even know if some of you could peel a banana correctly. I mean, Velcro shoes are probably going to be tough for you. 2 little straps, you're probably going to get confused with the straps. If you can't comprehend right now what has been, I mean, I have been validated to Pluto and back, or whatever you think is the furthest point out there, round Earth, flat Earth, this Earth, that Earth, whatever. If you can't comprehend it at this point, it ain't for you, boo-boo. Go do something else. You are wasting your time and energy on something. You just go do something else. Go make yourself happy. Don't even bog yourself down with anything. Because I'm about to really take a real big, giant crap in your Wheaties right now. This quote-unquote National Guard member that died. Flags were only half-mast over in West Virginia. Nothing. President Trump, she's dead. She's gone. Those are pretty harsh words. If I didn't know what I knew and know, you might want to say that. You might want to brush that up a little bit. She's gone. She's looking over us right now. She's dead. So, why is it that in the world of social media, a 20-year-old, there's only 3 photos? 3. Her dad has a Facebook. Her mother has a Facebook. She has a Facebook. Her sister has a Facebook. Barely any photos. Perfect. Oh, that's quite perfect. Because there's not any photos hardly. There's only 3 photos of this quote-unquote National Guard member. 3. And they're calling her Specialist Sarah Beckstrom. Specialist. That's an E4. They call it the E4 Mafia. E4 is one step before you become a non-commissioned officer, E5 sergeant. It's a big deal, especially when you rank from what they call a fuzzy, the bottom level private. You go to PB1, PB2, private first class, specialist, sergeant. Big deal. Why do the 3 photos show her in a private first class rank? All 3 photos, the only 3 photos of this quote-unquote National Guard is private first class. Where's the specialist rank? Where's it at? Also, one of the photos is her holding the phone like this and looking in the phone. Like if this is the mirror, like if the camera looking at you is the mirror, she's looking in it like this. I can't stand those photos in the first place, because if you got to take a photo like that, you're a lonely character in the first place. All right. Some selfies, okay, like in a deer stand, a solo deer stand. No one else can take that photo but the hunter. But some of these photos, and some of them are like this. No face. What's the point of that? And the photo captures this right here. So, by perception, let's just remove real or not real for a moment. By perception, they show you that this 20-year-old is a typical 20-year-old who takes selfies like that. Which would mean, what? Oh, it's a selfie in a uniform. So where's the selfie photo in a specialist? Where is a photo of her in her rank? That would be so dishonorable and disrespectful to not show someone who passed away, especially on duty, in their current uniform. That would be like taking one of your loved ones who was let's just kind of say a command sergeant major or a sergeant major, and go, well, we're gonna bury him though in his master sergeant uniform, his first sergeant. We know he made it to a command sergeant major, but I like this one better because it's got this on it. It would be like go to one of your family members who was an NCO and say, oh, well, you know, when you die, we're not burying you in your last rank. We're going to put you in a specialist uniform. What? They'll write you out of their will. I mean, this is this easy. So see, when you say, oh, Derek Johnson, how dare you? I got a message, F you. I'm like, wow, your first time cussing. Woo-hoo-hoo, I'm scared. Doesn't take away the fact that where is the specialist rank? Where is it? Where is it? Real simple. And how come all of the people are still reacting, negatively reacting to what? What social media tells you and what mainstream media tells you? Again, you prove the point. Mainstream media are captured. All right? That would have been a false flag. That would have been a case where one of these back here that were detained didn't do or say what they were supposed to say at a certain point, and then this would have been, all right, well, guess what? We're going to show. There's going to be a connection, and there was. What did they say? What did they connect it to? They connected it to quote-unquote Joe and the Afghanistan when they made it, the pull out of Afghanistan in 2021. They're saying that this shooter was from the 2021. So see, when you know an operation, and you know a strategic operation, special operation, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, and you know those strategies and those tactics, and you know what a false flag is, and you know all these different tactics, they immediately connected it to quote-unquote Joe from 2021, Afghanistan. So if it were real, but then President Trump just yesterday put up that, oh, all documents, legal documents, executive orders, and national emergencies and proclamations are null and void, then how can Afghanistan be real? Boom! You got to believe in one or the other. There's your line in the sand. You got to believe in President Donald John Trump, that he's working with laws and orders. Then you got to go read, study, and comprehend all laws, orders, proclamations, treaties. Then you got to read and comprehend military law, federal law, military law, and then military strategies, tactics. You cannot believe in both. You can't have your feathers ruffled for one and then, oh, President Trump, I love him and that. No, it's one or the other. Lines in the sand. See, because when you know and study and comprehend the laws and the orders, most certainly do outline a special operation, strategic operation, 45-47, the whole thing here, the whole thing is the operation when you know every single intricate law and order and how they're applied, how they're enforced, the why and the how. Unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, strategies, and tactics, then it will click to you and realize that President Donald John Trump is the face of that. All this other stuff is to fall on these back here that they're taking down. And they're making their quote-unquote legacy, what they thought of their legacy, is being annihilated, decimated, obliterated, and destroyed. And just for fun, just for the fun of it, how is it that all these little pipsqueak shooters, under pressure, immense pressure, nerves, all the other things, breathing skills, breathing tactics, shooting skill, how is it that all these pipsqueaks, most of them look nerdy, how is it that they're so accurate on the first shot? So are you going to tell me, will you be willing to tell me that you would put these pipsqueaks up next to our special operations, snipers, Navy SEALs, Delta Force? How is it that you can't listen to a former Navy SEAL, which to me they're not former, they're always. How is it you can't listen to multiple Navy SEALs tell you that, no, that Charlie Kirk, that was not real? How is it that the man who shot and killed personally Bin Laden says, that wasn't real? How is it that you know more than him? How is it that you know more than the generals, the admirals, and the commander-in-chief? Because when you have a negative attitude or you express some whatever low-level IQ comment, that's what you're doing. Because in reality, that old saying where it says, if you have nothing nice to say, you don't need to say anything at all, you can make that applicable as well with laws and orders. If you don't know anything about the laws and orders, you probably don't want to say anything remotely close to anything until you do what? Until you read, study, comprehend. Because when you do read, study, and comprehend, guess what you're going to find out? You're going to find out that I'm the only one with the books that outline the 45-47 and their #1 bestsellers, and it's going to expose all of these platforms, Republican and Democrat. It's going to expose all the people that could have known the whole time and didn't and don't. So what's going to happen in the future, mark my words, right here, time signature, and I've said this before, but we're going to do it again. Mark my words. You're going to see people trying to write certain things as if they knew. Timestamps prove it, baby. Timestamps prove it. That book's been in publication now this month, 2 years, part 1. And then my Google Drive, my Google Documents, Google Drive proof, the documents.info, published January 2021. Military occupation. You're watching military in control of this nation. See, it's what quote-unquote Joe did not do. The Title 10, the Title 32, the 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies, the illegal migrants, restricting telecommunications, the tariffs. Not one single tariff was removed from 2021 to 2025. Not one. Not one tariff that was put into place in 2018. There's 2018 again. Not a single Obama, Bush, Bush 1, Bush 2, Obama, Clinton judge tried to block. Not one Democrat and or Bush that we all know was also tied into this. Not one single deep state judge tried to block a tariff from 21 to 25. But they're telling you the same group of people, even though it's all part of the operation, and that's the portion that's operational, the mainstream media, not one single Obama, Bush, Clinton appointed judge tried to terminate a tariff. And they displayed to the people in 21 to 23 a Democrat president, a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate. And they could not abolish, terminate, revoke, or rescind one Title 10, one Title 32. It don't matter what the paper shows. Again, the federal it says that quote-unquote Joe terminated Proclamation 9844, but your visuals, you saw President Donald John Trump at the border of Texas with the National Guard and the Adjutant General and the governor of Texas, which would have been after, quote-unquote, this termination. So where's Obama's orders to put them there? There's your auto pen. There's your, it's not legal, because it never was. The whole thing's an operation. The Trump dance. I love when you just take a big giant crap right in the Wheaties of all these just attention whores, algorithm whores. All these people just want a name and a face. Oh, I want a name and a face. Your heart's not in the right place. Your motives are not in the right place. Your intentions are not in the right place. Right? And why are you supposed to know when you're not even someone that has any kind of intelligence, meaning military intelligence, meaning the actual intel, and I don't like that word, because so many people abuse that, misuse it, and overuse it. So that's why all of you people, civilians, are also learning the skill sets of what to identify, who to listen to, and who to unfollow, because 99% of these people, they are not talking laws and orders, none of them. So why are you putting your faith and trust in a bunch of moving mouths when they don't even talk what they're supposed to be talking about? What you're supposed to know. Because this whole video and what President Trump just did, just like when he put this on his ball cap, that was the first big, massive validation. Even though you could already known it before that, because the laws show that, laws and orders. But this, and then the post. The post. I'll call it the post. The post. Oh! Because you can know. And you should know. And you need to know. But especially if you love God and this nation, what God did with our founders and giving us this amazing nation, all right, the military, and if you love President Donald John Trump, you should want to know what makes him so unique and extraordinary, what makes this whole operation so biblical, monumental, and historical. And let me just end on one little thing here, my little testimony. It ain't much, but it is for me, because of knowing where I stand with my Maker, is this. First and foremost, the Bible does tell you no weapon formed against you will prosper. Now, there's a lot of people who quote scriptures out there and they try to fit their narrative, or they try to fit it with politics and all this other stuff. And they are some are the most corrupt out there. I say this for my life and applicable. You have to find your purpose and your plan of what God brought for you. I'm speaking on me, myself, and I. No weapon formed against you will prosper. Also in the 23rd Psalm, it specifically tells you, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Now the word death in Hebrew context, I have learned, it means darkness right there. So that means anything dark in your life. It could be a divorce, it could be a breakup, it could be a death, whatever it could be. It could be. Yea, though I walk through the darkness, I will fear no evil, for thine art with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. But let's skip ahead where it says, I will prepare a table in the presence of your enemies. You know what God is telling you there? God is saying right there, if you will just seek Him first, study His Word, you have a relationship with your Creator, your Spirit, your Maker. Don't focus on anything else. Obviously protect yourself, yes. Obviously be aware of things, yes. That portion, but we're talking about the spiritual portion. If you'll focus on that, and not what the enemy's shouting, focus on what God's whispering. You know when He says, be still and know that I am God? Just close your eyes and don't even think of any of the yelling, the cussing, all that. Don't listen to what the enemy's shouting, the noise. Focus on what God's whispering to you. Now, it's no secret. I'm not highly decorated. I'm not all, none of that whatsoever. I know that. That's why it's funny when the trolls and haters in the past, oh, how can this guy know that? Well, I do. What makes it funnier is if you are decorated and I know more than you, that's not a good look. So, see, that's them focusing on what? Not themselves. They were focused on me and made it more about me than I ever made it about me. I make this about God. I make this about the military, the generals, the admirals, and President Donald John Trump, and then other people like Dan Scavino and Devin Nunes and some of the people that I've got to meet, or etc. All right? So it's more about those people who are set this all up. And I know a lot of those people. And I give credit to them first, because they're allowing me to follow their footsteps and follow that path and carry on not only the legacy, but also what we have to do as individuals and civilians of this nation. But it's also what our founders established. And my family's been here Native American. So there you go. So my personal story. So there's that. I was forced out of the military. I will be able to tell that in the future. And it's going to all be validated. I mean, I am fully retired from the United States Army. All right? And no matter what people out there, the enemy's shouting, doesn't matter. My family knows, and my people know. All right? I went through this stage where, from when I got out of the military to what took place August 24, 2022, I went through a lot of things.